What is the dumbest storyline that's going to come out of this Super Bowl that we can immediately debunk right now and try to throw some water on?
I mean, the Stafford Hall of Fame thing is a little strange to me. We can't. I saw Nick Wright say this morning. It can't just be quarterbacks and Aaron Donald, right? Like, is that the future we want for the Hall of Fame? Like a bunch of guys who put up big numbers. It's funny because I really like Matthew Stafford, and
Me too.
I went to Detroit 2 years ago, and I said, I said to Matt, I think you're the forgotten guy because you think about the two generations above him. Obviously Eli, Phillip Rivers, Ben, and then above that
Rivers
is right. And then above that is obviously Manning and Brady. And then below him, he was getting lapped by the Mahomeses of the world, eventually the Joe Burrows of the world. And I said, you're in this weird window where you don't have any peers really because the NFL didn't know what to do with the spread offense. And there's a million reasons for it, but there was kind of a dead zone of quarterbacks, and you're in here putting up a ton of numbers. And so I thought his legacy had been underrated a bit, and then he wins a Super Bowl with essentially one good drive, and now all of a sudden we're putting a gold jacket on him. I thought that was strange. The other narrative that I thought was a little bit strange.
Wait, can I chip in on Stafford? Because actually, as I was watching First Take, I started wondering how many quarterbacks are in the Hall of Fame. Do you know the answer?
I don't. Tell me.
What's your guess? Because I was surprised. Just guess, top of your head.
20.
Interesting. So I would have said 48. I had no idea. It's only 27.
Okay.
And so I listed the guys basically by decades, even though guys overlap decades, right? But if you really lay it out and you look at it, it's basically 5 guys per decade. So you start in the 40s with Otto Graham, Bob Waterfield.
Sure.
The 50s are Unitas, Van Brocklin, Tittle, Blanda, Lane. 60s are Namath, Tarkenton, Starr, Dawson, Jurgensen. 70s are Staubach, Stabler, Bradshaw, Greasy. 80s are Elway, Marino, Montana, Fouts, Kelly. 90s are Moon, Favre, Young, Aikman.
Yeah.
And then we get to the 2000s, which Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner are in. Tom Brady will be in. Roethlisberger and Breeze will be in. And then we get to the 2010s. Rodgers, Stafford, Ryan, Rivers, Eli, Wilson. So if you look at it, it's 4 or 5 per decade. But in the 2010s, we have 6. So that's
and you
too
get
many.
into a huge problem. No, but you get into a huge problem, which is you can't do this for the quarterback position. There was a huge offensive boom in 2011 onward, right? This is the easiest era ever to play quarterback.
Yes.
And you can't draw the line and say, we're going to let all these quarterbacks who have great numbers and won one Super Bowl and not do that for receivers. There's every receiver who's coming in right now is setting records for rookies. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. There's going to be a huge boom of receivers who are Hall of Fame eligible too. And so what do you do? I wrote this 5 years ago. I remember calling voters and be like, what do you do with this? And you raise the bar. You raise the bar. You don't lower the bar and say, well, Matthew Stafford did this and he's better than, Dan Marino. No. It is so easy to play quarterback relative to any other era in football. I'm not just talking about the sort of health and safety rule changes. I'm talking about schemes. I'm talking about coaching. I'm talking about defensive rules, which have been getting, I think people have been complaining about defensive rules since 1978, basically. But it's gotten easier and easier every single year. And so you can't just say...
And longevity.
Yes, exactly. Joe Montana was on some news the other day, and he was like, the GOAT debate, the greatest of all time debate, is so different now because, if Joe Montana were born in 1980, he would have played 7 more years.
Right. You have the guys, if you look at the list, Staubach played 11 years. Now he went to the Navy. Otto Graham was 9. Marino was 16, and it felt by the end, it felt like he was 100 years old. Steve Young was 14. He was
watch late Dan Marino drives. No one has ever, he was dealing, but no one has ever looked older on a football field.
But you think when they were playing quarterbacks back then, it wasn't just the head hits. It was the constant guys diving at their legs, right? Marino, yes. I saw a clip, Rodney Harrison, when he took out Trent Green. Did you ever see that clip of I'd forgotten about it. It was the last preseason game, and he did the Bernard Pollard dive into his legs, but it was actually worse than Bernard Pollard, and just takes him out in the second quarter of a meaningless preseason game. That was happening all the time. So these guys, it was inconceivable, which brings me to Stafford. Right now, he's 12th all time. He's almost has 50,000 passing yards. You figure with the longevity thing, he might play 6 more years. He could play until he's 40. And at that point, he'll be one of the 5 biggest passing yard guys, and he has a Super Bowl. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer now, but I just think there's no way he's not going to be in there. So the new way to figure this out, the days of like Warren Moon making it, I don't think it's over. I think you're going to have a Super Bowl, and you're going to have numbers. The more interesting one to me is Eli. What do you do with him?
2 Super Bowls. I mean, I guess it comes down to how you view the Hall of Fame. Can you tell the story of football without Eli Manning beating the Patriots twice and being consistently good over 15 years?
Eli had, I mean, I think he was like top 30 for passing yards. I'm trying to find him. Maybe not.
But again, that comes down to playing in that,
he was ninth.
That era.
Yeah, he was ninth. He threw 57,000 yards. But the 2 Super Bowls, Aikman made it. Aikman won 3.
Mm-hmm.
But basically everybody who won at least 2 Super Bowls is like Stabler's in there. Stabler was like, if you look at Stabler's career stats, it's like Namath in there. Namath won 1 Super Bowl. If you look at his stats the last 7 years of his career,
not good.
They're actually really bad.
They're bad.
Surprisingly, shockingly bad. So yeah, I think it goes back to the point you made earlier. Like, if it's a quarterbacks league, does it make sense for the Hall of Fame to shift toward more quarterbacks? It's not fair. But like Ray Guy remember that we argued about whether Ray Guy was a Hall of Famer forever? And it's basically like,
I think I actually missed
punter
that.
position doesn't matter. No,
I missed the Ray Guy debate.
You might have been too young. Yeah, he's the best punter the first like 35 years of my life. And I was like, how is he not in the Hall of Fame? He was so much better than everyone else. But it was like, nope, punters can't be in.
Are we going to do that with Justin Tucker in like 10 years?
Evan McPherson?
Evan McPherson. I was thinking Evan McPherson. It's been 1 year for Evan McPherson. Like, we can't do the Jamar Chase thing. I mean, it's strange. I mean, the thing about someone like Eli Manning, and I would extend this, by the way, to Ben Roethlisberger and a couple other, Carson Palmer, who's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't have a ring, so it's not even in the discussion. Like, those guys were in the best era ever to play quarterback because they got all the advantages of being young in an era where there was full training camp, almost like 10,000 hour theory. There were no rules on practice, all that stuff. And then by the time they got old in 2011, they were able to save their bodies because all these new rules had come in. That was the longevity. So they actually, that kind of 2002, 2003, 2004 class, that was the best era maybe ever to come into the league for a quarterback, because you got the best of both worlds. You got the training on the front end and then the health and safety on the back end. And so that everything was stacked for someone like Eli Manning to have a great career. But I still think 2 rings you're in.
Well, and also you couldn't hit receivers over the middle after 2005, and then the concussion thing kicks in 2011. Right. And even that, the best play Stafford made in that whole game was that no-look pass to Kupp over the middle, which I didn't realize till I got home how crazy of a pass that was. But Kupp gets beheaded in 2002. He's knocked unconscious after he catches that.
There's a book called Paper Lions, one of the best books of football ever written.
Plimpton.
And in it, Raymond Barry says the middle of the field is called the pit because you go in there once in your career and you get your head knocked off, and then you never go there again, ever. And now that's where they live. That's where Brady and Manning and all these guys, they live over the middle of the field because they know that the rules are different. Cooper Kupp, if Cooper Kupp was born in 1940, like Raymond Barry, everything's different, okay? And so I think that is probably the biggest change for defenses, is just the fact that the middle of the field is wide open and you can take advantage of it. I mean, even Joe Burrow, one of the things is that, we knew Joe Burrow was going to be able to do quick game to neutralize some of the front because they can throw over the middle of the field. That stuff is wide open. When the reason they were able to get Aaron Donald in one-on-one matchups is they walked up a linebacker, basically, that opened up a little bit of the middle of the field. That changed everything. The middle of the field being open has literally changed football.
There's one of the first Super Bowls I remember watching was Vikings Raiders. Yeah. And the Vikings had Sammy White, who was like one of the most fun young receivers of the 70s. And he gets like basically beheaded, I think by George Atkinson in that game. And if you watch like the John Facenda thing of that game, it's like Sammy White was knocked out of the game on this hit by George Atkinson. And you watch it and it was like he should go to jail for 10 years when you watch the hit. And that's what the football was like basically until 2010, until that crazy Ravens Steelers playoff game when everybody was going to carry it off.
Hey, do you remember when James Harrison almost retired for a weekend because he wasn't allowed to hit people anymore? Do you remember this?
Yeah, that was great.
He was just like, I'm reconsidering my future because you're not allowed to hit people anymore. That was like 11 years ago.
Well, when you talk about the QBs and how hard this is going to be to figure out, I mean, Matt Ryan's 8th in passing yards right now. He did at least win an MVP. At least he won a Super Bowl. The hardest one for me is Rivers. I actually think Eli probably should be in by the whatever standards we have because of those 2 postseasons and all the yards, right? Even though it's insane to think of him as a Hall of Famer, he probably gets in. Rivers, though, I never felt like Rivers was one of like the best 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league. He never got all the way to the Super Bowl. He lost some big games where he was favorites in the playoffs. And he never got there for me, but he's 6th in passing yards right now. He's probably going to make it. But also, I just don't see it.
I think the part of the problem with the Stafford debate, and Rivers is the same way, is that if you're just doing quarterbacks, then a lot of the metrics that you normally use, which is all decade team, all pro team, that has to go out the window because there's only one of those. And so, or 2, depending, And so we're getting into a very large gray area with some of these quarterbacks, and that concerns me. I'm not a huge like sanctity of the Hall of Fame guy, but I do like the idea that we can look back and look at the Hall of Fame as sort of guideposts for what this era was like.
Well, the annoying thing is I don't trust the Hall of Fame, some of the choices they make anyway. Like Cliff Branch made it the other day and over Stanley Morgan, and Sal made fun of me because I brought this up, but you just compare their stats. Like Stanley was almost 20 yards per catch for his entire career. He had, I think he had 700 more yards than Cliff Branch. He played longer. I think he was just as good by any calculation. But it's like they almost don't use the stats. They really default to the old school, well, big games. Cliff Branch was in more big games. But it's like, well, Stanley Morgan was on the fucking Patriots. We had Steve Grogan and Matt Cavanaugh and Tony Eason as his quarterbacks. Like, he was still able to get 20 yards a catch. So in general, like, I just feel like Baseball Hall of Fame has been overanalyzed. Basketball Hall of Fame, when I went over it, when I did my book and stuff, there was a couple of those. Lately, some weirdos have been getting in, like some weird choices that I'm just like, all right, I guess we're letting everyone in. And then NFL Hall of Fame is a combination of they're super precious about it, but then the choices are crazy. And it's just like, I never took it that seriously. Did you?
No, and I would also say, remember, it's only basically one selector per team, and a lot of it has to do with who's presenting you, and sometimes guys change their presenter and all that stuff. It's totally different. I will probably never have a vote on the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, only because
don't
the
do
best
that
way
to yourself.
do it.
You can do it.
What am I going to go get a job?
You can do this.
Denver? Go cover the Broncos, the Denver Post? Like that's the best way to do it. And so I'm probably just going to be an observer. It's a little different when it's that instead of, getting 75% of that vote. I mean, like Curtis, and I don't want to be mean, but like Curtis and I were looking at the list of baseball voters, and it was just like, what? Like, who? This guy's got to vote? It's just a little bit different. And so I think that the fact that it is a closed room, it's a closed loop, changes the conversation. And if you just think about this, if you have 5 people in that room, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame room, who are really like, I really like this guy, that can change the entire conversation. No one's going around and lobbying all of the voters in baseball. They can do that in pro football. And that's why I think the conversation's a little bit changed. But I also think they probably have the best process of anybody because it's people who, at least we know, are locked in on the game and not just like, oh, I got this vote 20 years ago and now I had this weird vendetta against Barry Bonds.
Well, I'll say this about Stafford. In the moment, that last drive where, especially that 4th and 1, where I was like, oh my God, they're going to run Sony Michel into the middle of the line for a dive and get stuffed, and the McPherson's going to kick a field goal and the game's going to be over. And then Kupp makes the play. But that drive, it was longer than I think I realized as I was watching in the moment because it was so exciting. Yep. Stafford was great. You think like he basically had Kupp. It was amazing to watch in person, to just like them triple teaming Kupp. They're mauling him on like the last 7 plays. I think there's probably pass interference on every play. He doesn't want to throw it to Skoranek, that no other receiver has. They don't respect the running game. The screen passes weren't working. And it just felt like the Bengals were saying to themselves, if we shut down Kupp, we win. And yet Stafford over and over again was making plays. He was really good. Same thing for the end of the Tampa game, right? Tampa comes all the way back. They get it. They get the tying thing, and he throws an unbelievable pass down the middle to change the game. So I think that matters. And you could say, all right, well, does that mean Joe Flacco makes it because he had a good postseason? No. But I think if you're going to make the Stafford case, terrible team, put up stats anyway, took a big beating. And then when he went to a good team, he won the Super Bowl. So that matters.
I mean,
I would say he's on his way to going in.
Sure, he needs more. He needs more after this. He probably needs another ring or needs a sustained excellence.
3-4 more good seasons.
Sure, yeah. I don't think. I mean, the Rams did stack the deck. Cooper Kupp is really good. I saw a stat this morning that Sports Radar since 2009 has been tracking, receiver quarterback completions, and the 55 completions in the fourth quarter from Stafford to Kupp this season are the most they've ever had on record. And so what tends to happen is that late in games, Stafford and Kupp just say, okay, we've done the game plan for 3 quarters. Let's just take no more Skoranek. Okay, let's get Skoranek out of this equation. And it looked like, I think that I heard that, Stafford is moving Kupp outside, giving him some even of OBJ's routes. This was matchups. And this is also why, if you're the Rams, you bet big on talent, is because you get these little matchups and all of a sudden, the Bengals did not go all in on talent. And all of a sudden it's Eli Apple against Cooper Kupp. Guess what happens then? And so I think that, there was an advantage that Stafford had. He made the plays. The no-look pass was awesome, all that stuff. But the deck was stacked for him. And this wasn't a Joe Burrow situation. Stafford, by the way, had the opportunity to be Joe Burrow in Detroit for a decade. Couldn't do it. We probably should point that out. He didn't get them to the mountaintop. But Stafford did what he needed to do on Sunday. I'm not gonna throw a parade for Stafford.
Yeah, I'm not sending him to the Hall of Fame, but I think we have to be prepared that a few more seasons he's going to have the resume to get in.